Good morning. I'm Stephen Bader, Executive Director of the East Bay Economic Development Alliance, or East Bay EDA. I would like to welcome you to this morning's webinar about incubators and accelerators. East Bay EDA is excited to be co-hosting this event with Innovation Tri-Valley Leadership Group, particularly as today's speakers all have connections to the Tri-Valley subregion. Before I turn it over to my colleague, Lynn Naylor, CEO of Innovation Tri-Valley, to add a few words and welcome our moderator and panelists, I wanted to say that one of the reasons we're scheduled today's webinar when we did is because later this year, East Bay EDA will be celebrating our 10th annual East Bay Innovation Awards. Those of you who are tuned into today's webinar will be the first to know that we are officially extending our deadline for nominations to next Friday, April 1st. So please help spread the word and nominate companies and organizations for consideration for one of our 10 competitive awards, including advanced manufacturing, arts and culture, built environment, clean tech, community impact, education, food, engineering and design, life sciences, and technology. Anyone who nominates will be entered into a drawing to win 2 round-trip open passes for domestic or international travel on Southwest Airlines. Those passes expire soon, so we're actually taking Southwest Airlines motto to heart, just want to get away. So great opportunity to get in. We will be announcing, back to the Innovation Awards, our finalists in each category at our East Bay Innovation Block Party, which will be taking place at the Bridge Yard in Oakland on Thursday, June 16th, and announcing the awardees at the 2022 East Bay Innovation Awards at the Fox Theater on Thursday, August 4th. So mark those 2 dates on your calendar. Both are Thursday evenings, and make sure to spend more time with us celebrating the incredible innovation happening right here in the East Bay. Without further ado, I want to turn it over to our colleague, Lynn Naylor, CEO of the Innovation Tri-Valley Leadership Group. Thank you.
Good morning, Stephen and everyone. Thank you so much. We're delighted for ITV to have this partnership with East Bay EDA. We love doing these projects together, especially based around innovation and disruption. Innovation Tri-Valley Leadership Group is a collective of leaders and influencers who are advocating for the Tri-Valley region as a potent innovation hub with an excellent quality of life right here in the heart of our larger East Bay. We are the fastest growing subregion in the Bay Area right now and welcoming startups and expanding tech companies at rapid pace. So this conversation is really exciting for us this morning. Stephen and I and East Bay EDA and ITV are very pleased to introduce you to a colleague of ours to moderate this panel this morning. He's a young guy, but he's actually been working in the innovation space for more than a decade. And I bet he's going to drive a great panel this morning. Please help us welcome our moderator, the Executive Director of Igate Innovation Hub and Daybreak Labs, who has also just been named Innovation and Economic Development Director for the city of Livermore. We'll give it to you now, Brandon.
All right, thank you, Lynn. Well, like all of us, I'm not as young as I used to be. I appreciate that warm welcome. I appreciate Innovation Tri-Valley and East Bay EDA partnering to put this event on. As Lynn said, I am the Executive Director of the Igate Innovation Hub, which is a roughly 12-year-old nonprofit organization co-founded originally by the city of Livermore and the 2 national labs in Livermore, and now enjoys a partnership with Tri-Valley cities of Pleasanton, Dublin, the town of Danville, Livermore, and the 2 labs. One of the things we do at Igate is run an incubator called Daybreak Labs. We've run incubators for over 10 years in the Tri-Valley area. Learned a lot in that time and happy to be able to share some of that with the group today. Great audience turnout, and I'm really excited about the panel. I've worked with each of the panel members over the years. I wanted to start with a little bit of an introduction to why incubators and accelerators matter and what they should be doing. So fundamentally, incubators and accelerators should be focused on positively impacting the trajectory of the companies that they serve. So that means helping companies, young companies, do more faster and achieve more success than they would on their own. There are a lot of ways to do that, but fundamentally within the technology space, most incubators and accelerators are focused on at least providing 3 things. One is expertise. That can be domain-specific expertise if you're talking about a life sciences focused incubator or a deep tech focused incubator, or it can be more general business management practices like you'll see in some startup incubators throughout the Bay Area, how to run high growth scalable companies. It's a really different form of business management. The second thing is facilities. And that can be as simple as collaborative office space or space to get together and meet with, mentors or others. Or it can be very specific in the case of like biological research and development space, deep tech R&D space, and that kind of facility space can be really hard to come by. It's very expensive to build out. So companies that need that get a big advantage from joining incubators early on. The third thing is capital. And not all companies raise venture capital. Not all technology companies do. Some bootstrap, some get grant funds and go directly into revenue. But the vast majority of technology-focused companies who join incubators and accelerators are also interested in raising capital from angels or venture funds. But there's a whole variety of different funding sources for the very early stages, especially for science-based companies that are bridging out of national labs or universities. There's an organic piece to it, which is the network component. So if you're an incubator or accelerator that's delivering expertise, facilities, and capital, you're probably also either starting with or organically growing a broad network of service providers and partners and mentors and others. And that's a really important component for incubators and accelerators, at least the successful ones, to deliver in a post-incubation phase as well. So expertise, facilities, capital, and then there's this sort of organic network component through alumni and business partners that is really important also. So I want to dive into the panel discussion, but I want to introduce our panel members first. Dr. Sulatha Dwarakanath from Kaya 17. Kaya is a company that we've had relationships with going back to the Daybreak Labs incubator that I operate. And Sue is founder and CEO of Kaya 17, which is a developer of on-site diagnostic testing solutions and one of the first developers of rapid COVID-19 tests that are non-invasive and saliva-based. Sue has a PhD in molecular biology from New York University and over 30 years of experience in product innovation, development, and strategy. She was the founder and chief scientific officer of Nanoscience Diagnostics, a point-of-care focused company, and previously has held roles at Bayer, Thermo Fisher, Roche, and other startups. So welcome, Sue. Thanks for participating today. And Dr. Hannah Farquhar from Lawrence Livermore Labs, a business development executive at Lawrence Livermore. Hannah and I have worked together for many years, so I'm very happy to have you on the panel. Hannah is a science and technology enthusiast by birth and training. She has a PhD in chemistry and has a decade of research experience in the national lab setting, in addition to another decade of technology transfer and innovation experience. So very happy to have Hannah on as well. And Kristin Sampayan, our final panelist, is founder and CEO of Opcondys, which is developing a new class of power electronic device for manufacturers of high voltage equipment for the electrical power grid. Allows manufacturers to produce smaller, lighter, and lower cost equipment and provides users with space, weight, and energy and cost savings. She holds a bachelor's and master's degrees in mechanical engineering from the University of New Mexico. And prior to founding Opcondys, Kristin operated sole proprietorships offering consulting and business services. And she brings a variety of technical and business experience to her role at Opcondys. So thank you all for being with us today. And I'd love for you to spend just a couple minutes filling in any gaps that I had in your introductions and bios about what your company is doing. It'd be really helpful to know what stage I think your company is at for the audience. So why don't we start with Sue?
Thank you, Brandon. Yeah, so Kaya 17, as you said, is a company focused on point of care testing. We have developed a platform where we can do various disease testing. And currently our first product that we have is a saliva-based point of care test where you get results in 15 minutes for COVID-19. This is the SARS-CoV-2 assay. It's an antigen. It's what we call a new antigen test, which is as accurate as a PCR test because you can test somebody at day 1, and which is the same that you can do with PCR, but the other antigen tests, you have to wait at least 3 days before you can start testing. So that's the biggest advantage we have. We have a very high sensitive, highly accurate saliva-based point of care test currently. We are working on various other tests now for allergies, for women's health panel, and other tests that we are focused on. We're in R&D phase for those. That should be launching in about a year or so, the allergy test first, and then the ovarian cancer, cervical cancer, those kind of tests later.
Great. Kristin?
Well, thank you, Brendan. So we are, as Brandon mentioned, we're developing a new class of power electronic device. So this is similar to a transistor, but it is able to handle voltages that are common on the utility grid. So we can do with a single device what takes hundreds or even thousands of typical transistors to do. And so this not only provides space saving, but also because it is more, it can, it switches in a different manner. It operates in a different manner than regular semiconductor transistors. And so it's more energy efficient as well. And so that's how we're able to provide both energy, size, and cost savings. And so this, it not only reduces, I back up, it's to be used inside of equipment that goes on the electrical grid, like inverters for solar energy, grid-tied energy storage inverters, anywhere that electricity needs to be changed from like one voltage or one form to another. This device can be used inside that equipment to replace transformers, just all kinds of applications. And so this will make the electrical grid more efficient, more reliable. And so therefore it saves not only manufacturers of this equipment manufacturing costs, but end users costs as well, and can reduce the cost of electricity and increase reliability for consumers. We're currently developing the basic switch, but we're also doing a demonstration project of a grid-tied energy storage inverter. And so we're working on an ARPA-E project right now to do that demonstration. So we're expecting to get to market within a year or two with the basic device, and then the inverter technology, we would be looking for a partner to develop that, so, and get that to market.
All right, great. Thanks, Kristin. Hannah, tell us about Lawrence Livermore and IPO.
Thanks, Brandon. Yeah, I think this audience is aware of Lawrence Livermore National Lab. It's one of the premier research and development institutions funded by the Department of Energy. And it is a very innovative place. It's an exciting place to work. And in the Innovation and Partnerships Office that I work in, we work to take the technological innovation and move it out into the private sector, get it onto the market. Kristin's company Opcondys is a licensee of the intellectual property from Lawrence Livermore, and that was brokered by our office. And so that's what we work on. One of the things that I do to do this is manage our entrepreneurial training programs. So we try to teach our scientists and engineers some of the entrepreneurial skills that they can use in their everyday work, and that can help us transfer out the technology into the private sector. And so those entrepreneurial training programs, one of them is called the National Lab Accelerator. And I run this with my colleague, Dr. Roger Werney, who has great experience and expertise in this area. And as we were going out into the Bay Area and Silicon Valley and building our network, we were learning about all these incubators and accelerators. And Roger, being the creative man he said, you know, that the educational component they provide to startups and the network component they provide to startups, we can give that to our scientists so that they're better off in developing their technology. And so that's why we started the Accelerator Program. So we have an educational component, a networking component of business mentors that we match with our scientists. And then we do pitch events where they compete with each other. And it's an exciting program. And we've just kicked off the 2022, and we're always looking for mentors. So I'll turn it back over to you, Brandon.
Yeah, well, it's a good segue into my first question, which is actually for you. So Lawrence Livermore's programs, Lawrence Livermore is interesting in this conversation because you're not incubating fully formed startups. Like most of the Bay Area incubators and accelerators incubate fully formed companies that have founding teams behind them. You mimic more like what you might be called like a skunkworks project inside of a bigger company, or some venture firms have internal incubators that actually spin out companies. it seems like you're doing something that's more like that. So you're upstream from startup formation. So you're tackling the piece of the incubator value proposition that's more focused on the expertise side. So how do you do that? What are the mechanics of the Academy of the entrepreneurship programs that you're putting on at Lawrence Livermore?
So like I said, they're based in education, and it's taking those skills that incubators and accelerators teach to startup founders. We're teaching them to scientists so that when a technology is ready to be transferred out and become a product, they are more suited, they're better trained in order to talk to the business community, and they will have started that network building so that we can more easily move that technology out to the product. You know, you get to a point in R&D, because we are R&D, so we do not have companies, we have R&D products. But when they're ready, they're out of that R&D phase and they're ready to move into the private sector. The more prepared the scientist is and knows how business works, the easier that transition occurs. And so that's what our programs are designed to do. And, you know, we have two types of education. We have a 3-day program that we partner with UC Davis Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. They do a 3-day training for our scientists in the basics of business model development and elevator pitch. And we've trained over 350 scientists through that 3-day program. The Accelerator program provides a little more in-depth training and the business mentoring component. And we've had about 30 people go through that since 2017. And I know of about 6 startup companies that have utilized that and then spun out of the lab. And so it's really changing the culture of the lab to be more prepared for transferring technology out.
Yeah, well, we're incubating 2 of those companies right now at Daybreak Labs. One's a diagnostic device company and the other a material science company. And I think they definitely both got a running start at the startup creation process by going through those programs. So that's great. Thanks for sharing that. So Sue and Kristin, I want you both to take a whack at this next question. You've had affiliation with a number of different incubators, accelerators, support programs. What are the most important resources that you've been able to take advantage of from your relationships with those kinds of programs? And what have you found to be missing from those programs? We can start with Kristin. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Well, we've been involved with several. The first one we got involved with was the Clean Tech Open, and that we were turned on to through the IPO. And that one kind of opened my eyes, because before working as a consultant, as a sole proprietor, it was basically these businesses grew organically. You know, I had skills, I knew people who, needed some help on various engineering business consulting issues. And so those businesses grew organically, word of mouth and all. But taking on a tech venture, and being more entrepreneurial, starting up something from the ground that nobody had ever done before, was, kind of really opened up my eyes, having to look at the markets, having to really, ask really hard questions about why we're doing what we're doing. And so Clean Tech Open really helped me get that business model canvas put together, to understand all of the things that go into really developing the startup and then growing it into a real thriving business. So it's not just, me out there working one-on-one with, my clients. It's, developing supply relationships, developing investors, developing customers, finding out what customers really need. And so, so that was, kind of eye-opening and, challenging, but they also provided mentorship as I, to help me learn and go through all of this. So that was, very helpful to me. The other thing I think generally that the groups that we've been involved with, the accelerators, and I guess we've been involved with Blue Tech Valley, which is more of an incubator. But the other thing is just connections to services that we need, to legal, to financial, introductions to investors. So it's all of these resources that, you can put together the business model canvas during the accelerator, during Clean Tech Open, but then you have to actually go out and find those people. And so these groups have been very instrumental in helping with that. So helping to get the resources that we need to make it work.
Great. How about you, Sue?
Yeah, so we are a graduate company of Daybreak Labs, as Brandon mentioned before. It's been a great experience, being at Daybreak Labs. And actually, I've had experience working with incubators and accelerators before. When I was working at Nanoscience Diagnostics, we had actually incubated in Austin. Austin Community College has a very different approach to companies, and they wanted to, they created an incubator actually, where they have incubated about 8 companies there, and NSD was one of them. That's where I realized how an incubator can actually accelerate a small company, a startup company, to get going very quickly. We were talking before, you start the company from ground up, and you have to bootstrap every little thing that you have to do there, starting from looking at what product you're going to develop, how is the market, am I in the right space, am I at the right time, and you have to get your funding in place. So all that, puts a lot of pressure on the small company to go, and that had a great impact on how NSD moved forward. So when we started Kaya and we were here in the Tri-Valley, I was very fortunate to meet Brandon and found out about Daybreak Labs, and we incubated in that space. We moved so fast because they had the network of people that we wanted to, get all these other little accessories that we have to do. See, it's very easy for us because we know how to do the lab stuff. Yes, we can do it very quickly, get the product going, but then there's so many other things that you have to do by the side. And Daybreak Labs made a huge difference to where we were. And so we were able to even graduate from there to becoming who we are today. And that has helped us a lot. The network that they brought to us. See, being a life science company, there's more challenges as an incubator because we need these labs that are certified. We need BSL2 certification, various other certifications to use some of the, even though you're not using live samples and whatever you bring in, you have to be able to be certified. And finding a lab like that was very difficult. You can find many incubators that give you office space, but that's not enough for us, right? And that's where we worked with Brandon actually very much to create that ecosystem. And he is now taking it to another level, which is really, really nice to see. And for us, it made a huge difference. I can tell you when COVID hit, we said, oh, we can do the COVID test. And we just jumped into it. And then we were able, because we had so much backup from Daybreak Labs. I think this is how startups can accelerate very quickly. And this is a great model to move on.
That was a nice plug for Daybreak. Thanks, Sue. Appreciate it. Not
Well,
pre-planned.
I'm here because of that.
Yeah. So how did both of you, Sue and Kristin, how'd you get connected? You mentioned through IPO, Kristin, for Clean Tech Open. For the other incubators and accelerators, did you reach out? Did they know about you in advance? And Sue, I want to hear your origin story of how you got connected to us too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think really our primary, contact has been IPO, to reach out. I think that's how we got, to know you, Clean Tech Open. And then I believe with Blue Tech Valley, it was the same. Blue Tech Valley actually reached out to us because they had been in contact with IPO. When they were, they had a pitch contest. This was back in, I think, 2015 or 16, when we were just getting started. And so they contacted IPO to find out, if they knew of any companies, anybody who, was connected with, lab licensee or whoever that would want to. So yes, I think that's how we initially got involved with Blue Tech Valley too.
Okay.
So IPO has been a wonderful resource for us. They really, have worked hard, or they do really work hard to, make sure that the technologies that are developed at the lab, not only are they available through licensing, but they are, the support of their licensees. So,
About the network. Thank you, Kristin.
yep. Mhm.
Sue, how about you? How did you initially stumble upon us?
Yeah, so, when I initially moved here to Tri-Valley, they had all these meetups that was very popular. And so Yolanda, who has the Life Tech Devices meetup that she had, this was the one in Pleasanton. And so I went there and I said, oh, let's see, this device group must be really nice to connect to all the people I know. It was really good. I connected to a lot of Lawrence Livermore Labs people, a lot of the local companies and all that. And when I was talking to Yolanda, she was asking me, so what do you do and all that stuff. And so we were talking about this and she said, oh, you should look at this Daybreak lab. That's where her company is also located. She said, oh, this will be really helpful for you because you are looking to find some place where you can start doing your stuff. And that's how I got connected to Brandon. And we, worked together to set up a life science side of things. And
So Yolanda that Sue is talking about is Yolanda Finchenko, who's the co-founder of East Bay Bio Network, has been a collaborator of ours on things like our Next Tech Speaker Series and our Life Science Summit. So for all the economic developers in the audience, encouraging and supporting your local professionals and building networking events within those domains is obviously really helpful. You don't know exactly how that's going to materialize, but we started doing so Daybreak Labs was not always a life sciences and deep tech incubator. We actually started moving into that space at the insistence of Yolanda Finchenko's, that collaborator I mentioned, because she had recognized early on that there was a very strong life sciences professional network in the East Bay. And they've been doing events all over the East Bay. So many of the people who were working at tech companies throughout the Bay Area, life sciences, technology companies, devices, diagnostics tools companies in particular, lived in the East Bay and were looking for opportunities to connect and do professional development, and some start their own companies like Sue. So we started hosting events and networking series really just to try to connect with that community and see if there was really something there for us to do in terms of providing incubation infrastructure for those companies. So for anyone who's thinking about starting an incubator or wondering how to expand their incubator's portfolio space, doing those kinds of events specific to subject matter like life sciences or deep tech or AR or whatever you're interested in is a really useful way to connect directly to that audience, find out what they need, and start to kind of co-develop and co-build the resources to support those kinds of companies. So that's great. So I want to stick with Sue and Kristin for a second. If you were going to design an ideal incubator for your company or for you personally, so whatever dimension you want to tackle this through, what would that ideal incubator look like? What would it offer? What would it look and feel like to be a part of it? Sue, you want to go first?
Sure. So like I said, I had experience in building this incubators before. So an ideal one would be some, especially since we are in life sciences, our lab is our biggest thing, right? So if you have a lab that can support all the activities that you do, simple activities, that we need, and then we are very big on instrumentation. So we use instrumentation for accelerating our product, but it is not that we use it every day. And some of these instruments are very expensive. So if you have in an incubator a space where you house all these spectrometers, fluorometers, all these things that we use, just for our accessories. That would be a huge ideal incubator that I would look for. A cell culture room, a microbiology room, and an instrumentation room. That will be the ideal incubator I would want, because we do these things, but we don't do it every day. And so for a startup to have all these resources under their company is extremely expensive. But if we have access to it, we use it for an hour today, 2 hours tomorrow, that would be the best ideal situation. And I think I see some of the incubators are headed towards those things, and it's great to see that.
Kristin, you're not a life sciences company, but are there parallels to what you're doing?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, because we're developing hardware, we need a lot of test equipment, a lot of infrastructure type support things. So yeah, kind of on a similar line, but totally different technology. Having oscilloscopes, network analyzers, high voltage power supplies, these pieces of equipment that, like you say, they're very expensive, but we don't need them all the time. Mm-hmm. An hour or two here and there, what we've found is that as we're doing development, we have to plan, do engineering, design these experiments, and then it takes us maybe a day or two to get data. It can take months of planning. So if having to have this equipment, purchase this equipment, but then use it for a very short percentage of the time that we're actually working, yeah, like you say, it gets very expensive. And so, yeah, having lab spaces is and the equipment available is ideal. I think another thing I have found, partly, I've been wearing two hats in our company, doing both the doing some technical development and doing a lot of the business aspects as well. Just the day-to-day bookkeeping, and I do have an administrative assistant who does a lot of this stuff, but I'm still doing things like our reimbursement requests and things like that. Having some administrative support would is helpful as well. To just be able to take care of preparing things, doing, the typical day-to-day administrative stuff I think it would be an essential part of an accelerator or incubator, as well. So.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, we work primarily with technical founders, and most of them are first-time founders. And so that audience, every minute, every hour you spend focused on that kind of, more trivial but necessary administrative work is an hour you're not putting into product development or business development, right? So I think that's a really good point. You mentioned something too about demonstration projects. And I'm curious how that fits into the need of companies like yours, these science-based startups, where you need a place to put something out in the field to run tests and create data. For you specifically, Kristin.
Yeah. Sure. It's well, and demonstration projects are, number one, you need to show customers what you've got and how it works and how it can help them. But it's also for demonstrating to investors that you've got something that somebody really wants. And so, yeah, having a space to do that, to set something up. It's an area where people can come look at something hands-on, see how it works, see results. That would definitely be a part of an ideal ideal incubator for me.
So Hannah, in addition to your entrepreneurial programs, and I want you to talk about how those fit into the broader life cycle of a startup and the ecosystem in the East Bay. You also have the Livermore Valley Open Campus, which we didn't talk about getting into today, but that sort of demonstration, I'm thinking about Vector Atomic, I'm thinking about AML, the Additive Manufacturing Lab. how do your facilities fit into your broader portfolio of kind of incubation related activities?
Listening to Sue and Kristin talk about facilities just now, it really triggered that advanced manufacturing lab that we have here in the Livermore Valley Open Campus is kind of an answer to that in some cases. And AML just won the Innovation Tri-Valley Game Changers Award. And so we're very proud of it as a space that startups that are working with lab scientists can take advantage of. So some of, if in that manufacturing space, if they need that equipment, if they need that space, they can co-locate within the advanced manufacturing lab and work side by side with Lawrence Livermore scientists. And so it's set up to address that in a very specific case in terms of manufacturing, but I think it has been successful. Like you were talking about, we had a collaboration with Vector Atomic and some other startups who were physically located there to work with our scientists. And so it has been successful, and I'm sure we'll see expansion of that into other areas as well.
Yeah. There's some really good questions coming in. I'm trying not to get distracted by those. We're going to get to those questions pending available time, but keep them coming in the audience. There's some good stuff there.
So one thing, Brandon, I wanted to plug in a little bit. So one thing we faced was when we wanted bigger space from the incubator to jumping into starting a company, there is really a lack of lab space in this Tri-Valley area.
Yeah.
And we had to really become more innovative than what we were to find this space where we are today. It was actually, and I didn't want a big space either. I wanted a small space where I could have one lab, I could do my stuff, prove what I'm doing, then go get more funding and expand, right? So that was very challenging for me. And we've actually found a warehouse space here, converted that into a lab, a BSL2 lab, which was not the easiest thing to do, but we did it and we did it with very minimal funding that we had. And so if some space like that is available, it would make it very easy for people to even graduate from these incubators, go into a space where they can immediately start working. That is extremely challenging right now in the Tri-Valley, but I think that would be good to look into and have more lab space. And some of the lab spaces that are available, to be extremely frank, extremely expensive for a startup to even incubate in there.
Can I ask a question quickly to Sue and Kristin? Because I think at the stage of both of their companies, the facilities are incredibly important. But at the beginning of this, you were talking about business model development and going through that market validation and finding partners to help you validate it. Is that something that is important to have in an incubator and accelerator, or do you get that elsewhere?
No, I think that's extremely important for an incubator too, because like Kristin was saying, we wear so many hats when we are a small company, and having to try to do everything with the 3 people or 5 people that you have, it's going to be tough. But if you have those facilities available to you, like admin facilities and other things, and even like marketing, right? We got to go look for I'm building a product. I can't say I'm going to build it and they will come. They will not come if I build a product that's not useful. So that market analysis is extremely important for us to do. And if we have resources for that it is extremely important for that. For us. So I think that makes a huge difference to have that kind of support. And in fact, when I was at Daybreak, I should say, I did find that with Yolanda does that kind of work a lot. So it really helped that she was there to talk to me about how the market analysis should be done, who you can contact, what you can do. Even having to know who to contact is a huge thing, right?
One of the great things about the East Bay is there are a lot of very large companies here, Bayer, Thermo, Roche, the big institutionals. So the talent pool that those companies command is a target-rich environment for startups, even before they can hire full-time employees from those companies. If you can create opportunities for those people to intersect with each other,
Yep.
just to share best practices, expertise, and start to begin that transition of, can I sell you on the idea that my startup is going to be a big deal and you should be a part of it? The startups can never compete on comp alone with the bigger companies at the beginning. So it's all got to be about upside. And so creating the opportunities for the startups to interact with these super talented and experienced folks in the East Bay. We're working in a professional capacity, but not at a founder or even senior executive level is really important. So it's incubators and accelerators, the physical space matters, but creating the relationships and the opportunities for people to meet each other is also really important. I'm loving this dialogue that's going on in the chat right now about physical space. So I hope we can get to that a little bit. My next question gets to some of what has been asked in the chat and the Q&A. So Kristin and Sue, now that you're kind of post-incubation stage, what really matters to you? What are the important things for your companies that are going to determine whether you can successfully scale or not?
Yeah, I think for us, the big one's going to be funding. We've pretty much proven the technology works, that we can do that our device is pretty much the size and it can do everything that we expected it to do. But the problem is that, that valley of death, the chasm of death that, a lot of entrepreneurs face, after they get to the point where they've developed their technology, their product, their, what it is they want to do. And they show it can work, but it's getting people, either to buy it in the quantities that it needs to become profitable, or to get investors to get them over that chasm, so that they can kind of go on that upwards path towards profitability and growth. So I think that's the point we're at right now. We need to really get more backing here. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Sue, how about you?
Yeah, you're right on the mark, Kristin, on that. We continuously need to raise funding because you got to keep moving that needle from R&D to sales, marketing, to productization, to commercialization. And for us, there's always R&D at the back.
Yeah. So
for us, having been, developing new products on the same platform, we have to keep doing the R&D. So the fundraising is a continuous process. And also, since we are now into the post-incubation, our product is in commercial use and developing new products, we still need a huge hand-holding on marketing. Sales and marketing is a huge project by itself. And so that is a good thing that we need right now. And, if we have more support on that, that'll be really, really good for us.
So one of the things I think incubators can do to help address this is incubators create this kind of nucleation point for all of this talent that's out in the area, right? So an individual, let's say you have a very experienced and successful business development executive who's working at a local institutional life science company, legacy company. They may not know how to find Kaya 17 on its own, but if they know that there's a local life science incubation hub where they can go and meet a bunch of companies, like it creates a clearinghouse function for people who want to get involved in startups. So that's one of the benefits of having incubators in your community is people know how to connect to that broader ecosystem. Same is true for local venture funds. We do a lot of work with Tri-Valley Ventures. They're connected to a lot of really experienced operators who have a breadth and depth of experience growing companies from very early stage up through IPO or exit. Being able to increase the efficiency of connection between those people and the companies that they want to work with is a function of the incubation effort, and having one in your community creates a lot of value that way. I want to pivot a little bit to this conversation that's going on in the chat about facility space. And I just want to address it and encourage maybe East Bay EDA, Innovation Tri-Valley, and us to schedule another session, or at least a working group session, on the challenge of life science facility space and kind of deep tech commercialization facility space, lab space in the broader East Bay. Because you heard Sue say accurately that accessing life science incubation space is phenomenally expensive for startups, even in the East Bay. So NBC Biolabs and others, QB3 over at UCSF, they're very expensive, but so too are a lot of the East Bay life science hubs. We need more of them to help create more competition for that space, to bring the costs down for the companies. So while it's expensive for the companies to access it, it's really expensive also for the building owners, the landowners, to build and outfit that kind of space. Office conversions and industrial conversions into life science labs are promising, I think. But even so, you're still looking at hundreds of dollars per foot to build that out. So it's something we're really aware of. And part of the reason why you see really dense clustering around these facilities is because they're expensive to build, and getting landlords who are unfamiliar with those markets to want to convert underperforming office space into higher performing lab space first requires an education process about what that market opportunity is. And I think that's something that you need regional convening organizations like East Bay EDA and Innovation Tri-Valley to help lead that charge of helping landlords who are not familiar with those markets understand how valuable that can be and get more of them converting and throughout the East Bay, and not just in Emeryville and Berkeley and Alameda, as has been pointed out. So that's a whole separate conversation and a separate effort that I think needs to be pursued. And I would love to be a part of that. So I'll put in my own plug for a future working group conversation with our partners on this. The other piece that has come up in the conversation is about talent coming from the community college and university system. And I know a lot of our companies at Daybreak have had interns come from Las Positas College. There's a partnership between Lawrence Livermore and UC Merced that has been active and underway for a while. So I don't know if Kristin or Sue, if you have had any direct experience hiring people into either technician level roles or higher level roles, but how do you see the opportunity there working with the university and community college community here in the East Bay?
Yeah, so I have had great experience with that because two of my techs, one from Las Positas on the mechanical side of things, he has now become our full-time employee here. He started off as a part-time tech, and CCSF is another. They have a huge biotech, ecosystem there. So they have an internship program through which I got two of my techs, and one of them has now, become. She's a student at UC Berkeley, but she's part-timing with me, working here, but she's my super lab tech. That's what I call her. So they are awesome resources. And, in Las Positas, Nan Ho has been very instrumental in putting together these kind of programs so that the local companies can access a lot of, they're actually tailoring their program for the companies so that we give them input as to what we want in their students so that we can hire them very easily. So this has been really helpful for us, especially being in the startup mode and, getting resources locally. And like you said, Brandon, we have other resources other than the community colleges here. We have Thermo Fisher, Roche, and other companies, but the community colleges have really, really made a huge difference for us.
Sue, how about you? Or I'm sorry, Kristin, how about you?
That's fine. We really haven't had any contact. When we first started out, we did some exploratory. I think I maybe reemphasize we're actually out in the San Joaquin Valley. So when you talk about East Bay, we're a little east even of that. But so the community colleges out here, and the college situation is a bit different, and they don't really have the types of programs set up in the area that we're working in. So I guess, that's one thing I haven't been able to take advantage of. So.
Yeah. Well, I think it speaks to the importance of having collaborations between the education sector so that the students are being taught the skills that the companies need today, updating those skills regularly. And then having those placement programs where a startup company can go get an intern who can become a part-time employee, who can become a full-time employee, even as they're looking to potentially transfer. And as so many community college students do, they're looking for workforce skills. They're not looking to pursue a bachelor's degree necessarily. So getting them placed. I mean, one of the reasons why we're a nonprofit incubator, our backers are largely the cities and the labs. One of the reasons why we value this sort of life science deep tech sector where there's an intersection of manufacturing and biology is that there's such an array of jobs at those types of companies across the education and experience spectrum. So it really helps to make more balanced communities, which is an important part of our work, kind of looking at the city and urban design standpoint. So having these community colleges in the community, providing training for people who want high quality jobs and to have marketable skills, and then having the companies growing here simultaneously and lots of them is a really elegant way to do economic development. So we like that a lot. I wanted to get to some of the questions we got in advance also, because we're coming up on time here. How have state, local, and federal resources help incubators, accelerators, and startups? And I want to really get to the startup pieces, because I know, Kristin, you've had some grant funding that's come through. Sue, I'm not sure if you had some grant funding coming from other sources. I guess I'll say that our incubator is funded entirely by local sources in the cities, and then our partnership with the 2 federal laboratories. So we're a concrete example of something that would not exist but for that support. And then, Kristin, can you talk about how grants have helped your company?
Yeah, well, we've definitely received most of our funding through grants. We've provided some of our own funding, but then we also, when we were first starting out, worked on a National Science Foundation, SBIR, that's Small Business Innovation Research grant. So that kind of got us started off. And then we also received funding from the California Energy Commission's CalSeed program. And then we're currently working on a project for ARPA-E, which is the Advanced Research Projects for Energy, that's out of the Department of Energy's office. So, I mean, it has been critical, to us. And bringing a technology out of the laboratory, I mean, the laboratory was using it for, their purposes, very high purpose or high, very fast switching purpose, which is very different from what this technology can be used for in commercial application. So there's a big gap between, what is being used at the lab and here. And so it's hard to get investors to get interested in something that, doesn't have that, proven track record or something that they can actually relate to, to understand exactly what the market can be and what the financial potential is. So getting the state and federal funding has really helped us to develop the device to the point where we can demonstrate it, we can show that it will work, as a commercial device, and to really be able to show that potential, so that we can kind of go to our next step, getting funding to get it to market. So.
Great. Sue, how about you? Have you had any experience with that?
So our core technology was developed with SBIR funding too. But then, we moved on into commercial space very quickly. And so right now we are in the mode of private funding. So we just closing on our Series A from a local investor here. And so we did a seed round of private investment before, and now we're closing on the Series A. But right now we are in that space where it is very commercial, more for marketing and all that. So, but having said that, we are developing new products. So we are looking into BARDA funding and other things. The state funding has really not helped us in any way. We have not been able to find the right fit with what's happening. But the federal funding, there are quite a few options for us. NSF is another big one for us. So
Yeah, we've had a number of companies get NSF funding, SBIR funding.
yeah.
I think we're gonna wrap up at this point. I'm happy to follow up individually with anybody in the audience who has questions that we didn't get a chance to answer. So I don't know if I suppose somebody will send contact info if they haven't already, for all of us. The last thing I do want to say, I think there probably are a lot of economic developers in the audience, city folks, people within that community. If you're thinking about starting an incubator, my piece of advice is to really focus. We had fallen in the trap over the years of running this kind of general purpose, idea of an incubator, because in theory, it opens you up to a larger market. We can help all the startups if we do this. The problem is that every incubator needs to have a concrete value proposition to its members, to the companies that it's serving. And you can't do that if you are trying to serve everybody. And so from a city standpoint or a county standpoint, really know what you're solving for with your incubator, connect with the people who are actively building companies in that sector, model after others. I've had great support from Gino Segre at Farquhar with their new incubator. He's been very collaborative with us. My experience working with other East Bay incubator directors is that there's a lot of generosity there in terms of sharing best practices. So I think really understanding what you're solving for, developing a detailed value proposition for those companies. It's in the best interest of your incubator and the companies to really have something that is lacking out in the market, out in your ecosystem locally, and not just to start an incubator for the sake of having an incubator. So that's my parting thought after 10 or 11 years of hard-won lessons in that space. And I just want to thank again East Bay EDA and Innovation Tri-Valley for putting this on, and Hannah and Kristin and Sue for taking time out of your mornings to come and talk with me about this. It's a subject very dear to my heart, and you were all wonderful. So I appreciate you all being here.
Brandon, can I?
Yeah.
A parting thought, a recognition of the female founders on this panel.
Yeah.
All your incubators and accelerators out there, recognize the dynamic, successful female founders out there. Great job, Kristin and Sue.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. This was really nice talking to you.
Great. Hannah, thank you for that.
Hmm.
Okay, Stephen, am I turning it back over to you?
Yeah, well, here. Thank you so much, Brandon, Kristin, Hannah, Sue, for a very fantastic panel. I think we could have probably gone for a couple more hours, and I know we'll hopefully have a chance to do that in the near future, either maybe even back in person one of these days. But until then, just want to say thank you to everybody for joining. Let's indeed thank our panelists and moderator one more time, and Innovation Tri-Valley is our partner for today's event. And one last reminder, the East Bay Innovation Awards, we have nominations are still open through Friday, April 1st. So please help nominate the fantastic companies and organizations across our region for well-deserved recognition. We have two events related to that, our East Bay Innovation Block Party on June 16th at the Bridge Yard in Oakland, and Thursday, August 4th at the Fox Theater for the actual awards event. Thanks so much. Have a great day. We'll look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.